Okay, so if you're watching this video, hopefully you've already followed the previous one where we created a Azure portal account with an AdventureWorks database, and we also created a web app right here that we can open in Visual Studio and edit directly using the FTP open website. So again, if none of this looks familiar to you, make sure you go back and watch the previous video first. So now I'm going to proceed, and we're going to do a couple things in this video. We're going to keep practicing the Matchbox recommender algorithm and technique in Azure Machine Learning Studio that we did previously with restaurants and movies. But also, it's time to shift from offline CSV files that aren't live, that aren't constantly being updated, to actual machine learning, where we're going to connect to the AdventureWorks SQL Server database, which is also the same database that our website would hypothetically use to record orders and new behaviors. So the advantage of this is then that we can create our SQL Server model so that it'll automatically retrain, use new data whenever it comes in, and have actual machine learning where our predictions evolve over time based on what the latest customers are doing. So let's begin with a new experiment here. And something else that we're doing for the first time is we're going to use the import data module to connect to real data. So let's change this. We'll call this the AdventureWorks recommender. I'll call mine demo. You can call yours whatever you want. So I want to grab, let's see, data input and output right here. Import data. Pull in one of those. So what this lets you do here is choose a few different types of data sources, which is great. I can use a header to call, grab some data. We're going to pull from an Azure SQL Server database. There's Azure Blob Storage. There's lots of different ways to pull from data sources. Let's start with this one. Well, we'll just use this one for now. So where do we get all this information from? Hopefully you remember from the previous video. Let's go to all resources here and go directly to our AdventureWorks database. So remember, we had to create a SQL Server instance first, and then we set up a database on that server. Let's go to that database. And for starters, let's grab our server name. I'll just copy it right here. Back here to Azure, paste in the server name. Next, the database name. Where do you find that? Well, it's actually right up here in the title, AdventureWorks. So, AdventureWorks. Username. Well, we set this up previously, but if you've forgotten where to find it, I'll show you where to go here. Go down to Properties. There's the server name once again. Here's your server admin name. And hopefully you remember your password from previously. Go ahead and enter that in. Okay, next we have a place here where we can write an actual SQL statement. So what we need to know first are the names of all the fields and tables and all that. So let's head back over to SQL Server. Let me pull it back open again. So we had this open from last time. If you don't remember, we disconnect, reconnect. We entered in all this information. This came from our Azure portal. Server name, same things we just entered in a moment ago. Go ahead and connect. So from this view in SQL Server Management Studio, we can pull up the AdventureWorks database, see the tables, see what we have to work with. So this is a very typical orders database, much like, if this is one of my students watching this, much like the in-text projects that you completed during your junior core year. What we want is some type of, we want the data in the same format that we use in our movies and restaurant recommenders, meaning we need some type of grouping variable, product or item variable that identifies the item. In this case, it's going to be a product, and then some sort of rating. Well, here we don't have a rating. What we have, though, is a purchase history. So let me just show you what this data looks like. I think I can pull up I have a diagram. Let's see if they give us one of those with this database. Yes. Looks like we don't have any diagrams. That's fine. Sales header. Start with this one. Right click, edit top 200 rows. Let's just take a look at what we have. Okay, so this is a sales order header, so it's going to come with an ID, and this is going to be unique. This is the primary key. Don't know what revision number is, but I've got the order date that it's due to ship, I'm guessing. an actual ship date. Then I've got, let's see, some other information, account number, customer ID, ship to address, bill to address, subtotal, tax amount, freight costs, all useful stuff. But I should know that here's where I come up with customer ID. Okay, let's close that one and take a look at, well, I actually should have left it open. Let's look at sales order detail next. So this is where we have the line items for that sales order. Think of this as our linking table or association class, the table that exists between sales and product, because a sale can have many products and a product can appear on many sales orders. So sales order detail represents the breaking that many-to-many relationship up into two one-to-many relationships where we have, here's the order that this belongs to, but we also have the product ID that each line belongs to. So one order will have multiple products on it, and each product will have a quantity purchased. So what we could do if we didn't have customer data is just use sales order as our grouping variable for the Matchbox recommender. And we can look at items that appear together in a sale. And then what we could use is the quantity ordered as our rating. So the presence of any order is better than none with none at all. But what I'd rather do instead is keep track of, rather than use a sales order, use customer ID. So we can get that from the sales order header and use that as our grouping variable. Because if I can keep track of one customer's, if I know that this order was purchased by the same customer that placed, I don't know, where's another unique one? These are some big orders. We'll say this order right here, which has quite a few items on it, then that's useful to know. So I prefer to use customer ID as my grouping variable. So no problem, we can do that. And then for the Matchbox recommender algorithm, price, this wouldn't be a bad idea. At first I thought, well, let's use line total because that's quantity times price. However, the data type required for the Matchbox recommender is an integer, and the line total has some numbers that are too high for the integer size that's used in the Matchbox recommender. So let's ignore price for now and use quantity ordered as a substitute for that rating, and that'll work. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We know the names of some tables. I know that customer ID was in the sales order header, so I've got to use customer ID. I also want to use, let's get our product name. That'll be easier. So let's see what we have here in the product table. I have product ID, of course, here in the sales order detail as well. And here's the name of the product. Let's use this as our label rather than the product ID, which will be harder to interpret. All right, so back to Azure ML Studio. We need to write the query. We're going to, now a great way to do this actually would be to test it out first here in SQL Server Management Studio. So let's make a new query and try this out. Let's say select, come on. There we go. We want customer ID. Now that's going to come from, we know the, we don't need to go to the customer table. We can get it from the sales order header table. So that's sales lt.sales order header. And we want all of those. So let's just start running these as we go to make sure that our queries are working. There we go. Execute. Okay, got that. Now we also need, along with that, we need the product name. So we're also going to get name, and that's going to come from, and I think if I looked in product, it was just name. I think we're probably going to need, name could appear in, well, no, let's find out. So that's going to come from sales lt.product. So sales lt.product. So we're going to have to do an inner join, or we can do it here in the where clause, which for me is easier to do quickly. So I'm going to say sales, we're going to tie, let's see, if I'm going to go from sales order header to product, I need that table in between them. Ignore that. Updating Visual Studio right now, and it's freaking out. So we're gonna need sales LT dot sales order detail, and then sales LT product. So let's tie these three tables together by their primary key, foreign key relationships. Oops, it's not on that space. Let's say sales LT dot sales order header dot, I think it's sales order ID. Let's take a look at that. Let me give myself some more room to work with here. In fact, I don't need properties open right now. I'll just get rid of that. All right, sales order. Come on. Header, there it is. Sales order ID. Yep, that's it. So sales order ID, and that's going to equal sales LT dot sales order detail dot sales order ID. Let me check and make sure that that's what it's actually called in sales order detail. Yep, sales order ID. Okay, and now let's tie together sales order detail and product. So sales LT dot sales order detail dot product ID. Let's just double check that one. Yep, there's product ID. And let's make sure that in product it's called the same thing. Yep, product ID. So this is where we're going to go to get this name right there. Equals sales order, no, sales LT dot product ID. Okay, let's see if this one works. Execute. Cool. So now we got the customer ID and the name. We've done an inner join. We're all good. Last thing we need then is the quantity sold, and I think that's just order quantity, if I remember right. Let's take a look at sales order detail. Yep, order quantity. Nothing else needed there. Execute. Okay, cool. We've got the data in the format it's needed to use the recommender algorithm. So let's copy this, head back over to SQL Server, to Azure ML Studio, paste that in there, and let's run this thing to see if it works. There's not a whole lot of data in that AdventureWorks database, so our predictions aren't going to be super accurate. So our evaluation metric will be low compared to what we were doing in the prior videos, but that's okay. Again, because we're setting up an actual machine learning situation, as more data is collected and this model gets continually retrained, it's just going to keep getting better and better. So that one worked. Let's take a look at the results data set. Cool. So here we've got connection to a live database in Azure. Next, I know that the data is already in the right format, so I'm not going to worry about the edit metadata pill like we did before. I'm just going to go straight to split the data. All right, let's pull that in. I have very little data. I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to 0.75. Oh, and change this to a recommender split. Change this one to 0.75. Okay. Next, let's grab our train Matchbox recommender. So keep in mind, we have two other options here. So we can include data about the customer and data about the product. In this video, to keep things simple, I'm not going to include those, but that would not be hard at all. See how we just did this import data? Add two more import data pills and pull information about the customer, including customer ID, and then information about the product along with product ID that you think might be relevant that we can use to improve the accuracy of this prediction. But to keep things simple for now, I'm just going to stick with just the sales data itself. All right. Score Matchbox recommender. Pull this one into here. Pull split data into here. Now, this specific type of recommendation we want, we can do a few of them. In fact, let's go ahead and try out several of these. But we'll start with this one. Let's take a look at for rated items only and just evaluate our recommender. So evaluate recommender. This one goes to this side. Split data comes to this side. All right, let's go ahead and run. Oh, did I do? Oh, well, I'll pause and let that run. Okay, cool. Let's take a look here at our, what is it, oh no, what am I doing? Come on. What's that metric called? There it is, NDCG, 0.64808, not a really great one actually. When I tried this earlier, I got something quite a bit better. Let's take a look at considering, let's take a look at our score Matchbox recommender here. Okay, so we only have a few users, a few customers in this entire database, and that's why the evaluation metric is so low. So it's better than, obviously, than a random guess, but I would expect that number to go up a lot higher as we gather more data, but that's okay. We just want to get this set up so that it can start collecting more data, and that score will improve over time. So this is saying that for each one of these users, here's the 5 items basically that are, again, they didn't rate it, but the 5 items that they're most likely to want to buy more of. What we want to do is change this now to recommend other items to them. So based on those items they've purchased, let's now recommend unrated items to them based on the items they've already purchased. So to do that, we only need to make one other small change. If you recall from the prior videos, this is where we plug in customer features, item features like about the product. You can do that if you want to, but what I want to do is this one. This is new and it's not in a lot of the books that are available right now for Azure ML Studio, but for this to work, we take the training data from up here in the split data. That's this one right here, and plug that in. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run this once more. I'll pause. I forgot to mention to you, once we do this and we're rating for unrated items, we actually can't use this evaluate recommender anymore. But that's why we did it previously and ran it for rated items, was to get a model evaluation metric. So it's the same evaluation metric for unrated items, but we're just going to remove this evaluate recommender off of here. Okay, that's it for this video. In the next one, I'm going to show you how to turn this into a web service, and we're actually going to use it on a web page.